Item: SCP-660. Object Class: Safe. Special Containment Procedures: SCP-660 may be safely stored in a standard locked safe deposit box, provided its mouth remains covered with an inert perspex disc and sealed with affixed tamper-proof strips. SCP-660 may be checked out for testing and research with the written approval of staff of Level 3 clearance or higher. Human testing of SCP-660 is discontinued. Description: SCP-660 is an irregular earthenware urn roughly 23 cm in height and 28 cm in diameter, with an opening 20 cm in diameter. The composition of SCP-660 is consistent with generic earthenware clays. The interior of SCP-660 is coated with dried mammalian uterine tissue similar to human endometrial lining. DNA testing is inconclusive. SCP-660 is capable of indefinitely preserving all biological tissue placed within it, regardless of external conditions or the state of the sample, until the tissues are removed. Living tissue will remain viable, and living organisms will remain alive, even when deprived of sustenance for extended periods of time. While the exact mechanism responsible for this is uncertain, isotopic labeling has shown that it involves the exchange of biological matter between the sample and SCP-660's interior coating. Cell cultures from tissues preserved in SCP-660 retain an abnormally high rate of cell replication. Several samples have tested positive for precancerous markers in smear tests. SCP-661 was a human fetus originally found in SCP-660, most likely having been sealed in the artifact for at least 6,600 years. However, SCP-661 immediately underwent massive transformation upon removal, additionally developing several consistent with anthropogenic progression. SCP-661 is most likely neutralized. Details are available to personnel with clearance for /660. Recovery: SCP-660 was originally recovered from an archaeological dig-in, where it was found in a purported gravesite among a number of other mundane artifacts. A beeswax seal covering the mouth of SCP-660 was dislodged during the excavation process, revealing SCP-661. Data expunged, after which the site was secured by the Foundation. The notes of Dr. presumed deceased enabled the isolation of SCP-660 from the rest of the artifacts.